Hello, team, and welcome to part two of my Ukraine war news update for the 24th of July 2023. As ever, I split these into two because my first one, I can already see it has been restricted. So that's what happens when I show you that footage in the morning of Lancet drones bouncing off tanks and whatnot. They don't seem to like that. Here is the rest of the news, and we start with the front line. As ever, operational security information is thin on the ground. Trying to work out what's going on there is quite a difficult business. During the week, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have said they've released more than 16 square kilometers of territory, in particular, more than 12 square kilometers freed in the south, and in the Bakhmut direction, about 4 square kilometers. But activity up in the north in Luhansk is troubling for the Ukrainians. Karmazianivka sector in Luhansk is developing into a strategic threat and must not be underestimated, says this source. 2 infantry brigades will be enough to stabilize the line, but the order must be given now. Time is of the essence. So I was talking about how it would be great if they could withhold the Russians and their advance with existing forces in the area, but that doesn't seem to be happening. The Russians are expanding their zone of control around Karmazianivka and indeed north of Karmazianivka towards Kovalivka and even further north as well at Rodhaya Rivka. No, I'm not pronounced that correctly, but we'll come to that in a second. So here we have Global War Monitor saying that Russia has crossed the Zherebets River and has advanced across it. At least 3.5 square kilometers have been added to the occupied status. Some people are saying it's about the same kind of advance as the Ukrainians have made in the south in the Robotna direction. Well, if that's the case, Russia have done that within a week. So that's really impressive by the Russians catching the Ukrainians off guard in this area. And indeed, Syriac Maps is saying that they've given the Ukrainians further issues to consider, having crossed the Zherebets further north at Ryahorodka. They say current situation on the Luhansk front. Russian armies cross the Zherebets River from a secondary axis adjacent to the town of Ryahorodka and reach the outskirts of Sahivka, another settlement just to the south of Ryahorodka. So this is a problem for the Ukrainians. I think they're going to have to do something to answer the Russians here, because they are taking significant ground in the region. Now, if we go to the south to the Bakhmut area, according to the Russian source Rybar, Ukrainian armies managed to go to the south of Klishchivka village. So the Klishchivka is south of Bakhmut, and to the outskirts of Kodiymivka, which is south of Klishchivka itself, and Andriivka villages. Andriivka is between Kodiymivka on the canal. Kodiymivka is on the canal. Andriivka is inland between Kodiymivka and Klishchivka. Anyway, the Ukrainian army has managed to go to the south of Klishchivka village and to the outskirts of those other settlements. To the north, sorry, not to the north. This is Global War Monitor saying that the Ukrainians have been geolocated to within 650 meters of Klishchivka. That's a geolocation. We've talked previously about how they've been fighting on the outskirts and possibly in Klishchivka previously. There are counterattacks that push, each side will do a counterattack and that will push the other side back somewhat. We have some evidence to suggest that the Ukrainians have been in Klishchivka because the Russians have been hitting it with artillery. Well, that would indicate the Ukrainians have been there. But yeah, we know that they're very close here. The Russians are putting up a huge amount of defense here and pretty much everywhere, right, across the front line. They don't want to give up an inch of territory to the Ukrainians, and they're fighting for each of those inches. And the question is, are they exhausting themselves too much in doing so? They're certainly making this counteroffensive really difficult for the Ukrainians. But the Ukrainians are having more joy in the Bakhmut area. They continue to push, for example, the Russians along the E40 or the M03 road. They've done that by about 600 meters. So Global War Monitor has added about 0.6 square kilometers to the liberated status. And as we come to the southern front line now, not too much news about Avdiivka or anywhere between the south and Bakhmut, but we'll look at that later. Zaporizhia, Ukrainian armed forces advanced northeast of the village of Robotna and into the village of Kamyansky. In the direction of Melitopol towards the Tokmak Road in the village of Robotna, the Ukrainian army prepares the positions itself for a new wave of counterattacks, but a difficult stretch awaits them for the approach of the main enemy defense line. And in the Pryutny area, so this is actually further to the east, around the Velikonovo-Silka sector, the Ukrainian armed forces significantly expanded the zone of control north of the settlement and moved into the rear of the Russian positions located even further north in the Staromyorsky direction. The Russians are trying with all their might to hold out near Staromyorsky and Orozhany. The fierce battles are going on. Slowly, every inch of land will be returned. Believe in the armed forces of Ukraine. So, yeah, possible success around Kamyansky. In fact, one source is saying the Ukrainians have been pushed out of, Russians have been pushed out of Kamyansky. I don't think that's the case. And then possibly a little bit more success than we've seen previously for the last sort of week around Robotna. And then possibly some success around Pryutny and Staromyorsky. That's a fairly positive view of the situation. Radu Hosu, who's a Romanian analyst, is saying battle for Bakhmut, there are successes for the Ukrainians there. And he talks about how he's previously mentioned how it is a good place for the Ukrainians. Bakhmut 2.0 is an important battle. Again, I've said many times before, but I'll remind you, at least 50,000 Russians are massed around Bakhmut, and that's about 25% of all Russians illegally occupying Ukrainian territory. So his point is that there's a big force there. If you can fix them to Bakhmut and attrit them, then that is a really useful thing. So he goes on to say, since receiving cluster ammunition from the US, the Ukrainian army has started to advance at an accelerated pace, or at least to damage the Russian infantry in the Surovikin line. So these are the major trenches in an unsustainable manner for the Russians. It'd be good to see a confirmation of these claims. And he's talking about at the same time, HIMARS and multiple MLSRs, multiple launch MLRSs. Sorry, he's got it the wrong way around. Multiple launch rocket systems, such as Mars 2, M270, LRU, are targeting Russian artillery cannons behind the Surovikin line using their rockets, especially for that purpose, the M31 to destroy the communication lines, command centers, and ammunition depots across the south of the Russian defensive line. So this is what we talk about a lot, the degradation of the ground lines of communication and supply routes and logistics for the Russians. Why are they doing this, you might ask? So the Ukrainians, so his speculation is that the Ukrainians can approach with anti-aircraft warfare systems like the Avenger SAM, so that's on the back of Humvees, short range air defense, or Hawk to defend against the Russian Ka-52 attack helicopters. I've not seen any footage of the Ka-52, so I think they've actually been pushed back already. You might also question the morality of using cluster militias. No, I don't have a problem with that, given the context here. He goes on to talk about the southern front, Vasilivka axis, so that's near Kamyansky that it's talking about. After the total liberation of Kamyansky on the Dnipro River, so that's at the beginning of the reservoir, the Ukrainians are advancing successfully towards Lubove, an intermediate goal before Vasilivka. Now, I've not heard about that anywhere else. So I take what he's claiming here with a pinch of salt, but that would be really significant if they'd taken Kamyansky. On the Orikhiv-Tokmak axis, so this is by Robotna. The Ukrainians have already entered Robotna. It is confirmed that they are advancing both east and west of Robotna, the last locality before the main consecutive Russian defense lines, which we call the Surovikin line. So that's really positive. I'm not sure that is necessarily true, though. He says that Velikonovo-Silka area, the Ukrainians have liberated half of Staromyorsky, and on the other side of the river, they have entered Orozhany. So again, some pretty positive claims about what's going on in this southern front line. Talks about the Luhansk area, saying they don't have 900 tanks and 400 armored vehicles. He's saying that's false, but it is certainly a problem up there. And we have one of the sources that No Reports uses, who fights on the ground in the Bakhmut area, has actually been moved to Robotna and promoted. That's Osman. Yesterday, there were reports of Ukrainian advances near Kamyansky and fighting near Droznyanka as well. So I've talked to you about Kamyanska and the various claims around there. Certainly some success around there, it seems. And Drozhnianka is further, well, it's sort of between the Velika Novosilka area and the Robotna area. So there's fighting around there as well. Right, okay. Geolocated footage. This is coming from the Institute for the Study of War. Shows that the Ukrainians have made some advances in Western Donetsk area and Zaporizhia border area. So that's Staromilsky, Priyutne. There possibly are some advances. Geolocated footage suggests that Ukrainian forces made marginal advances in Western Zaporizhia, Kamyanska area, and Robotna as well. So we'll see. We'll try and unpick this. And there are, yeah, in the north of Bakhmut as well, as we've already said. So that's the ISW. And just to let you know, reporting from Ukraine concentrated largely on Kherson and the Antonivsky Bridge and saying, they're pushing the Russians back to Oleshki. I've not seen that anywhere else. The Humenyuk, the spokesperson for the Operational Command South, said that on the left bank of the Kherson region, a counter-battery fight is currently underway. Our military is trying to clear a certain territory, which they will, and then be able to take over without endangering the lives of soldiers. We would also really like to gain a foothold there and feel powerful. It's kind of weird way to say it. In fact, a counter-battery fight is going on now, and those messages that are running ahead of our forces on the left bank are very harmful to us. Quite sure what that means, but there's some focus there in that area. As I say, reporting from Ukraine says that there are some successes for the Ukrainians there, but I've just not seen that anywhere else. Right, onto military aid. US says that the Ukraine will receive F-16 fighter jets, but delivery will take several months, according to Antony Blinken. Washington is also holding out still against supplying ATACMS to Ukraine. I am of the opinion that I think it would be great if they had ATACMS, but actually, I think there's probably good reasons why they're not giving ATACMS. I don't think it's the US being difficult. I actually, I'll do this in an extra, but someone on my threads is saying they're actually relatively easy to take out by air defense. They don't they don't give anything that Storm Shadow don't already do, and Scalp, and actually can arguably do better without getting taken out by air defenses. So I think that the reason they've not given ATACMS is because actually they're not the best weapon to use, and they already have better weapons to use. So that's where because I really do think that if they really were useful, they would have been given. I'm fairly sure this is a military strategic decision, practical decision, rather than being afraid of Russian red lines or something like that, or some kind of appeasement strategy. I know people like Trentelenko will slag off Jake Sullivan, till the cows come home, uh, and say X, Y, and Z, but I don't think that's what's going on here. I think this is a military decision. This fall or winter, so autumn or winter, Ukraine will also receive US ground launched small diameter bombs. So these can be fired at HIMARS with a greater range. They're kind of adapted existing munitions, a bit like JDAM are for airframes. These are for like multiple launch rocket systems. And that would be significant. Now, we are hoping they'd be in Ukraine really in spring this year. That didn't happen because actually, even though they were kind of promised, they had to start making them. They had to create the production lines for them because these were kind of like, oh yeah, we can do this. And then they're like, yeah, let's have these. Let's have loads of these. Okay, well now we've got to build them. So that's why it's taken so long. Sweden, Finland, Netherlands assist in restoring power supply after Kakhovka Dam destruction. They provided 37 transformers and 5 kilometers of steel and aluminium wire to. Let's not have this argument to Kherson Power Company. Equipment weighing 36 tons expedited to the region's power supply restoration. So thank you very much to those nations. Now, someone was saying like there were rumors that Ukraine might be getting pulse or pools. The Israeli company Elbit Systems will supply 155mm Atmos self-propelled artillery mounts and 2 MLRS pools batteries to an unnamed NATO country. Now that was back in March. That they went to the Netherlands, as far as I can work out. And then I think Denmark have bought a bunch of these to backfill where they're given all their Caesars. So they're not getting they were getting a load of Caesars, self-propelled howitzers from France, and then they gave them straight to. They didn't really get them; they just went straight to Ukraine. And I think to backfill, rather than getting other Caesars, they actually bought into these multiple launch rocket systems to do the job. Now these are pretty useful. I mean, there are different rockets you can fire, different missiles you can fire out of them. The Elbit, there are rumors like this. So Elbit Systems has been awarded $150 million contract to supply pools, rocket launchers, and a package of precision-guided long-range rockets to an international customer. And then, rumor mill is like, is that Ukraine? Could be, but it could also be many other nations that are very interested. There's talk about Spain. There's talk about Czechia, uh, so on and so forth. I think that is on a Tatra Czech chassis there. So what are these? These are precise and universal launching systems, multiple launch rocket system developed and manufactured by Israeli weapons manufacturer Elbit Systems. Unlike standard artillery with pools, there is no need to move artillery units based on the required firing range. Pools can launch unguided rockets, precision-guided munitions, and missiles with an effective range of up to 300 kilometers. The multi-purpose launcher features 2 pods. Each pod is designed for a specific rocket type. The Aquila 122 has 18 rockets with a range of 35 kilometers. Aquila 160, 10 rockets with a range of 40 kilometers. And the Extra, which are 4 rockets with a range of 150 kilometers, and a Predator Hawk, 2 rockets with a range of up to 300 kilometers. The system can be accurately and effectively neutralize the specified targets at all ranges. It's designed to maximize response with optimal firing flexibility without the need for special modifications to the system. Typical firing mission can be executed in less than 1 minute from initiation. So, useful bit of kit, right? Is this going to Ukraine? I don't know. Speculation. Like, don't do. It's no one has said this is going to Ukraine, but I'm wondering whether it might go to Ukraine. But then Israel have pretty tight regulations with regard to weapons going to Ukraine, so it's far more likely that this will go to a European nation. But it could be in order to do that kind of backfill thing where the European nation then sends their own stuff and they get other kit to replace it. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that one in there. Right, Italy has offered assistance in restoring the Transfiguration Cathedral in Odessa. This is reported on the website of the Italian government. The attacks in Odessa, deaths of innocent people, and the destruction of the Transfiguration Cathedral have deeply affected us, the statement reads. That's obviously really good news. Thank you. I mean, I wonder whether sort of Vatican restorers and whatnot might be involved in that kind of activity. South African government is drafting, and imagine your local council, right, comes out and says, "Oh, we really want," and please don't let me get like sued by Taylor Swift or something. But say Taylor Swift like murdered someone, right? She's up for murder, and like your local council says, "Yeah, we've organised a gig for Taylor Swift because we really like Taylor Swift." Yeah, but she's a murderer and she's on the run. Don't you need to arrest her? You're like, no, we've changed the rules so that actually murderers can come to our can come to our council and put on concerts. It's all right because we like Taylor Swift that much. We just go, yeah, I know she's a murderer, yeah, but by the way, she's not a murderer. Obviously, this is an example. South Africa are drafting a new law that will allow foreign leaders to stay safely in the country, even if they have an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Yeah, we're signing up to these moral laws, like these criminal laws. Yep, we're with that. I mean, we're a moral society. So if someone's an international criminal, or at least being accused of being one, and we need to shop them to, to the courts, then yeah, we'll sign up for that. Yeah, but what if they're your mate? Oh, oh, if they're our mates, then we probably won't do that. Actually, we might just. Can we change the rules? Like if we're friends with them, I don't want to. I don't want to shop our mates. No. So we're only moral for people that are just like not really our friends. But if they're our friends, yeah, we can throw morality away. Yeah. Maldives has become the second largest supplier of microcircuits in the Russian Federation after China, Nikkei Asia says. Maldives is helping Russia circumvent sanctions. The small island state has exported about 400,000 semiconductors worth more than $53 million to Russia. Wonder how they're still making their missiles. Oh, thanks to Maldives. Won't be going on holiday there this year. Well, actually, no, I won't. I'm due to go to Crete. Like, I've got twin boys, and going abroad is quite stressful. We did it for the first time last year, and we're going to risk it this year to Crete. But it turns out Greece is on fire, thanks to global warming, it appears. and climate change. So yeah, the roads has been evacuated. 19,000 people. Corfu's on fire today, and I'm thinking, what are the chances in a couple of weeks' time of actually getting to Crete? Probably uh, fairly slim. Anyway, Unilever, just almost to the end here, Unilever has said it will let Russian employees be conscripted to be sent to Ukraine if they are called up. I don't think it can do anything but that, to be honest. Consumer goods giant, which has about 3,000 employees in Russia, has policies that cover the well-being and safety of its workers. However, in a letter to campaign group B4 Ukraine, it said it would comply with Russian conscription law. Unilever has been under pressure to pull out of Russia, but says the situation is not straightforward. No, sure. In a letter sent to B4 Ukraine, it said it absolutely condemns the war in Ukraine as a brutal, senseless act by the Russian state. They're pretty strong there against Russia, but they're still like active in Russia with a load of different um, labels under their sort of corporate family. It also said it has responsibility for its 3,000 workers, adding that it had a global principles, including the safety and well-being of our employees. Nevertheless, a British firm which makes products including Marmite and Cornetto ice cream said it was aware of the law requiring any company operating in Russia to permit the conscription of employees should they be called. We always comply with all the laws of the countries we operate in. Unilever and other Western firms have been under pressure to pull out of Russia since its invasion of Ukraine. However, Unilever said it was not straightforward. If it abandoned operations, they would be appropriated and then operated by the Russian state. It has not managed to find a way to sell the business that avoids the Russian state potentially gaining further benefit and which safeguards our people. So they are talking about there being a bit of a dilemma there, which might well be the case. It said there was no desirable ways forward, but continuing to run the business with strict constraints was the best option at present. You could argue differently there. Just to let you know that annual inflation rates in the euro sort of area, worth looking at this. Hungary has the most inflation, and also the biggest support for Russia. So I don't know if there's a causality there between underwriting that correlation, and then Slovakia, but then Poland and Czechia as well nearby too. Interesting, Belgium, Spain, Denmark. Spain have just had a big old election. In fact, that election was expecting to see the Conservatives and the hard right take over in a big swing, like we've seen in Greece, like we've seen in Sweden, and actually, it didn't quite happen. This was just last night. There is a hung parliament now, and the Conservatives and the hard right had a pretty bad last week. I think they shot themselves in the foot. This is a really good thread explaining exactly what happened. Actually, Brendan Boyle. So if you check out Brendan Boyle uh, on Twitter, 13 reasons why the Conservative hard right bloc failed in the elections in Spain. Really analyzes that very well. But why I mention this is it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of support for Ukraine. Spain have been fairly supportive. Robles, the defense minister, has been quite involved in supporting Ukraine, although they're a big country and really they're quite a long way behind, Germany, the UK. I was going to say Italy. Italy do a lot of rhetoric, but actually, when you look at their percentage of GDP, they haven't supported as much as maybe they could have done. Places like Czechia and Poland. So Spain is some way behind there. They politically a hung parliament might not be the best. There's going to be a lot of shenanigans taking place in trying to work out who can rule in Spain, and I think things like Ukraine will play second fiddle somewhat. So that would be my worry there. And then lastly, Russia is apparently selling oil above the price ceiling set by the West. Moscow won the struggle for influence on the world oil markets. Experts in the US pointed out that for the first time since December 2022, the price of Urals oil, that's Russian oil, exceeded the limit of $60 per barrel. Now, that's in the Wall Street Journal. We need to have a look into that and see why that is and whether that can be changed at all. But there you go. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you in my Frontline update soon.